We are in the middle of the second ideological revolution that has gone through our universities. And my contention is everything moves from campus to culture, and we're all living on campus today.
If you're a regular listener or viewer of this show, you know that we are concerned about what American universities are producing. They used to be devoted to truth and to reason, and now they've become centers for ideology and activism. They're shaping a generation to believe that the truth is relative, that morality is subjective, and that power is all that matters. That's what we're going to talk about on the show today, getting an update from someone who is on university campuses on a regular basis, especially what is happening there in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. This is the Truth Changes Everything podcast. My name is Dr. Jeff Myers. I'm your host. And basically the idea behind this show is I love to talk to people and hear what they're thinking. I love to ask questions of people who have some wisdom on something. And that's what we do. We just record the show and then send it to you. My guest today is Corey Miller. Corey grew up in Utah as a seventh-generation Mormon. He came to Christ, later became a pastor, a philosophy professor, a campus minister, and now he serves as the president and CEO of Ratio Christi. That's ratiochristi.org. That's a campus group that focuses on apologetics. He's authored or edited 5 books and holds 3 master's degrees and a PhD from the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. His thought is centered on the intersection of faith, reason, and culture. This is going to be a fast one, like drinking out of a fire hydrant, so get ready. Let's welcome Corey Miller to the Truth Changes Everything podcast. Dr. Corey Miller, welcome to the Truth Changes Everything podcast.
So great to be here with you, Jeff. Thank you.
I love the organization. I love what you guys are doing to help students study apologetics. A lot of our summer graduates join those groups and lead them in different places. So it's a pleasure to be able to have you on the show. I'd love to start right off with what I think is on the minds and hearts of everybody right now. You are one of a few dozen people across the United States of America who, in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, have been drawn toward and spending even more time on college campuses. I would love for you to give us a report on what you are seeing on campuses these days in these times.
Yeah, I appreciate the question on that. It's a passion of mine, obviously, and it's what our modus operandi is. I think as goes the university, so goes the culture. As goes the U.S. university, so goes the world. And so this is the battleground, ground zero. And so I've got up above me my books, but I've also got my combat boots so that we can talk about not being just about books, but about boots on the ground, and not being just Socratic beard strokers about fine ideas, but about doing something about it. And that is on the college campus. So in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, we have noticed both a spiritual sensitivity that's picked up. Some of our campuses are seeing more people come to Christ than they have before. On the other hand, we're seeing a greater level of hostility too, as our own chapter directors interact with people. And of course, just the heat on the campus that you see in the news. At any one time, I've got 3 to 6 cases of legal proceedings going on. And, that's not our modus operandi, but we've got 4 federal victories, 5 appellate court victories, 2 SCOTUS assists. And we gave the Department of Education a going away present to the president last December in a case involving the Secular Student Alliance and American atheists. And we were trying to intervene to protect our right to be on campuses, these very universities that we Christians started. So with respect to Charlie Kirk, a number of years ago, I got connected with an atheist philosopher named Peter Boghossian. He was a new atheist. He wrote the book, A Manual for Creating Atheists. Its foreword was by Michael Shermer of Skeptic Magazine, and it was endorsed, of course, by Richard Dawkins. Well, Boghossian invited me to his class in Portland, at Portland State, to give a lecture on God's existence for 2 hours in his atheism seminar, trained his students to try to take me down, which was a lot of fun for everybody. And then afterwards, we went out to lunch, and he proposed an alliance That might sound really weird until you fast forward and see where we're at today, where Richard Dawkins now wants to be our friend and wants to be a cultural Christian. Things have changed. We are in a revolution in this country. Both Boghossian and I could see this coming from different vantage points, but he said, you need us and we need you. This is about civilization now. I'm done with this whole affair of theism versus atheism. I am dedicating my career to defeating social justice and critical theory, and we should join hands. So I said, well, just remember, your side started this whole mess, which he later conceded to. He was silent at the moment. But I said, I understand the limited partnership. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Churchill and FDR had to partner up with Stalin, keeping one eye open at night. But there was some little mustache guy in the room who was more dangerous to both of them at the time. And so we decided we were going to go on a lecture tour together. We picked out 4 universities in Utah, and then we had 4 selected in Texas next and so forth that never got there because COVID shut us down. But we got to Utah, and our very first university, they tried to close us down right off the bat. One student group wrote an open letter to the president calling us logical fascists. Now, people like to call other people fascists today when they're anti-fascist, when they're Antifa. So we know all about that, these cultural Marxists. And he's a liberal atheist. I'm a conservative Christian. We were coming together to discuss viewpoint diversity and the death of intellectual diversity in the universities. The two most unlikely allies are coming together here. And then we went from there to the University of Utah, where he said, I told him, hey, why don't you call the atheist groups? I'll call the Christian groups. We'll have a big showing. He said, are you kidding me? All the atheist groups have gone woke. They would never lift a hand to help me or Richard Dawkins. And this was 5 years ago, right? And I said, okay, I'll try. So I tried. They didn't respond. They put me on their monthly email list. And that's how I came to find out that they were getting ready to sue the Trump administration's Department of Education on Trump's last day of office in his first term over a regulation that was inserted by Trump to protect campus ministries from being discriminated against. So because I was on their newsletter list, I saw that, called our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom, went in as intervening defendants. And what that did was it lasted about 4 years, but we ended up winning a case out of the Ninth Circuit Court, which again, like Trump or hate Trump, he changed the judiciary. We were kicked off of all those campuses in California for 6 years. We won, and the Biden attorneys saw that, and they cried uncle, and they gave up. We got a twofer in that same year. But going back to Utah, that happened with the atheist groups, the Christian groups, my alma mater, a crew that I used to be on staff with. And this is not to put all crew under the bus at all, but the Northern Utah staff did not want to come to our meetings because they thought we might burn bridges with marginalized people they were trying to build bridges with. And I said, look, this social justice stuff, some of it could be good, some of it's Marxism. And the guy said, well, maybe we can learn from Marx. So I quickly got on the phone with him and I said, look, I just want you to know who I am. I'm a former Utahn, a Utah Mormon, 7th generation. Ancestor was a bodyguard of Joseph Smith. I've written 3 books on the topic. I'm former Campus Crusade, faculty commons, and I used to teach apologetics to crew staff. And ultimately, I said, I just got off the phone with the crew president 3 days ago. So I know the air you're breathing. Trust me when I say we're not going to burn bridges. And if you're still afraid to bring your students and expose them to viewpoint diversity, just bring your staff. And he said, okay. On game day, they no-showed. And I found out later it's because he forced his staff last minute to watch a video on white guilt. So you're finding atheist groups and Christian groups starting to give in to this new emerging woke mind virus. We got to the next university, and it was the one where Charlie Kirk was assassinated. The first one was where Charlie Kirk's assassin got his first semester of education. And so we got an eye-opening now, looking back in retrospect, of what has been happening to viewpoint diversity. We are in a cultural revolution, Jeff, and that's why I wrote this book talking about this whole notion. What has happened to America? How did this new America, which is no longer grandma's America, get here? What about the universities, and what can we do about this?
Corey, this is so fascinating because I think what we're picking up from the conversation so far is that it isn't necessarily Christian students on campus up against everything else, but there are a lot of people right now who are it's not even that they're fighting for faith or against faith. They're just fighting for the freedom to speak. And your book, this is really, really timely. It's called The Progressive Miseducation of America. And it captures a lot of this drift and the weird alliances. And again, there are a lot of Christian groups on campus that are doing really good things, but man, there is a tendency in evangelicalism to sell out everything in order to make people think that you are nice. Okay, so we got a lot going on. I think we're starting to see our eyes are opening to what's happening here. I think a lot of students sense that something is off in higher education. It seems increasingly difficult to name what it is that is off. But, just going back to the book here, from your perspective, what's changed in the university system? And how is that in turn changing or shaping how this entire generation thinks about truth and morality? And I'm not just talking about what they think about. I'm talking about their noetic, how they actually are trained to think about everything else.
Yeah, well, what's changed is that we are in the middle of the second ideological revolution that has gone through our universities. And my contention is everything moves from campus to culture, and we're all living on campus today. So what happens in Vegas may stay in Vegas, I doubt it, but what happens in the universities never stays in the universities. That's not the intent. Mm-hmm. The intent of the university used to be the pursuit of truth, and it was Christians who started them in Europe and then in America, shortly after they got off the boats, ate their Thanksgiving dinner, completely stuffed, they went down the road and started Harvard, whose motto was truth, veritas. All truth is God's truth. These were the Puritans, the Pilgrims. They quickly changed that to truth for Christ and the church, which lasted almost 300 years, till 1936. And for the first 200 years, virtually every college professor was also a member of the clergy, the Protestant clergy. Up until 1880, church and chapel attendance were still required. But there was a battle going on right at that time. We had no PhDs in any of our universities, and so we had to send our best and brightest over to Europe, typically to Germany, which was considered the most formally educated country in the history of the world. And you're thinking about all the people at that time that had just gone through, like Immanuel Kant, you can't know ultimate reality, like Nietzsche and Freud, sexuality and God is dead, like Hegel, like Marx and Engels and Friedrich Schleiermacher, the father of modern liberal theology, and more. All these people then, their ideas are permeating. Our graduate students come back to Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Columbia. The battle's on for 50 years. They take over. We have to go start over at Calvin, Wheaton, Biola, and other schools that are now even starting to fill the cracks in their fissures due to the second ideological revolution. That was beginning right when the dust was settling in the 1930s in America. Something more nefarious was just beginning in Europe, in Germany again. This little school called the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory, critical race theory, critical gender theory, critical queer theory, critical pedagogy, critical iceberg theory. Anything that's critical, if it's not critical thinking, run from it. It's Marxism plus whatever else it's addressing. And those guys were Jewish in their inception, but globalist socialists, whereas their main rivalry, the right, they were the left, the right were the fascists, the still National Socialist Party. They were all socialists, but some of them just liked blonde hair, blue eyes, and borders. Well, the Nazis came to power. They had to get out of there. Where did they go? They went to Columbia and Brandeis and UCLA. And below them, and what I call the Axis powers of Marxism at that time, was Antonio Gramsci. Some would consider him the most dangerous of the cultural Marxist. And he never got out of prison, so why could he be so dangerous? Because his prison notes got mediated to the English-speaking world right here in my state of Indiana at Notre Dame University, no less, by a Marxist professor named Joseph Buttigieg, father of Mayor Pete, who may be running for president of the Democratic Party coming up here.
Wow.
And so that's not just homosexuality that Pete has learned. That's queer theory that he's learned, critical queer theory. And then within 15 years of that, you had the founders of postmodernism, French postmodernism, like Derrida, deconstructionism, Foucault. No one has been cited more in the history of scholarship than Foucault. And then Lyotard and other people. And what you discover with these postmodernists is you're thinking they're supposed to be like relativists, moral relativists, epistemological relativists, cynics, everything, which would then put them across the political spectrum from left to right and everything in between. But every single one of them for the first two generations were hard left, what is called the new left. And as it were, they were all members of the French Communist Party or sympathizers. So now you've got what is forming in the second ideological revolution, postmodern cultural Marxism. And they all came over to America, taught at our best universities. They made it through the sexual revolution of the 60s, got stopped with MLK, who was about color blindness, being concerned with character and not skin pigment. But then in the 70s, when they tried to blow up banks and police stations and the American public wasn't happening, they decided, you know what? This is one of the distinctives of cultural Marxism, is not only was it just not the haves and have-nots, victims and victimizers, oppressors and oppressed, and everybody belongs in some group or other, but we need to start thinking about the new workers of the world, the proletariat, no longer being the factory workers on the floor, but the academics. And let's get ready, folks, for the long march through the institutions. And they named it academia, media, and wait for it, ecclesia, church. And that's what they've been doing. And one final cap off for this, for the statistics for your audience. In the 90s, the ratio of liberal to conservative professor was 2.3 to 1. And that's pretty severe still when you have 100 professors in the room. But there still are checks and balances. You can't get away with saying anything crazy without it getting called on the carpet. But it is now 12 to 1 for those retiring, 23 to 1 for those who just got tenure and have 30 years ahead of them, 27 to 1 in the Ivy Leagues. And as Yale just announced a little while ago, in their humanities and social sciences, it is literally 78 to 1. What pastor, what parent or grandparent are preparing their kids for that?
There is so much in what you just said that's going to take some time to unpack. I think it's at least fair to say that whenever you're looking at the crime scene, Karl Marx's fingerprints are all over it. And then further, we look back at the Cold War and think we were so worried that the communists would bomb us that we didn't really think that much about the fact that they might teach us. And now this is where we are. So, okay, so let's go back to the idea of let's just define some terms real quick. We talked about postmodernism, we talked about cultural Marxism, but the way you put it in the book is their goal is to deconstruct the notion that reason, truth, or the very idea that our thought corresponds to reality. For those who have not studied philosophy, talk about that, the significance of the correspondence theory of truth real quick, and then kind of explain what's being done to deconstruct it. How would you know if that's happening?
Yeah, right after Peter Boghossian and I started out as a new set of odd allies together, he wrote an article for the American Mind talking about the Great Realignment 2.0, the Culture War 2.0. For him, Culture War 1.0 was victorious for liberals, and that was Obergefell, homosexuality and gay marriage. 2.0 is this new realignment of alliances, liberal and conservative, who have much more in common than the illiberal, the new left, the Marxist left. So he would say that along with the old school liberals and conservatives, we still believe that, to quote Voltaire, I may disagree with what you say, but I would defend to the death your right to say it. But now with Stalin, we have something more like ideas are more powerful than weapons. We don't allow our enemies to have weapons. So why should we let them have ideas? That's the heart of cancel culture. So the old liberals are getting canceled themselves. And that's why so many of them at the political level, like recent presidential candidates like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK, a Kennedy, have now become Republican. And we have people like Bruce Jenner, a.k.a. Caitlyn Jenner, that ran for the Republican governor position in California. And we've got, Elon Musk, who was a lifetime Democrat. And what is going on? Peter Boghossian says, we of the old American class, liberals and conservatives, scientific naturalists and Christians, we still believe that we should hear each other out. Debate is not hate. The other side thinks debate is hate.
So let me just pause there for a second, because I think what we really need to hear in what you've just said is that whether you do it through science or whether you do it through philosophy or theology, the goal is to discover a truth that actually exists, right, or categories of truth that exist independent of our ability to perceive them. That our understanding of reality can actually correspond to reality as it actually exists. And what you're saying is that's the new realignment. That's where people now you've got some atheists even and Christians who are saying we're still on a search for truth, capital T.
That's right.
Whereas the new view coming out of cultural Marxism is no such truth exists.
Well, and I would say truth, capital T, Veritas, Harvard's motto, the intent for all the universities. That was their purpose. Truth, the pursuit of truth, academic freedom, and may the best debate, the best viewpoint win out. Capital T, truth. All truth is God's truth. These guys still believe of the first Revolutionary Guard. They believe T, with scare quotes, because it's not all truth claims. It's that only scientific truth claims, because they're part of the first revolution, scientific naturalism.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
And so when they came over and took over our universities, you started noticing that departments were changing their names. Politics, which was always part of ethics, then became political science. It's not science, it's ethics for the public good. And psychology, the psycheology, the study of the soul, now is the brain and the central nervous system. So at Purdue, across the street here from me, it's called the Department of Psychological Sciences. So everybody wanted to be part of the sciences, right? That was the first revolution. And the apex of that first revolution was Richard Dawkins, sort of like the French Revolution, Robespierre. He got out the guillotine. The new atheists wanted to wipe Christianity off the map. And in the process, they wiped themselves out and got guillotined by their own guillotine. And that's why Peter Boghossian said to me, paraphrase, he said, I said to Richard something like, if you're not careful, only Ratio Christi is going to allow you to speak on their campuses, right? Because the American humanists took the Humanist of the Year award away from Richard Dawkins after he paralleled transgenderism with transracialism. So coming back full circle to what you're talking about, yes, this new Revolutionary Guard, they don't believe capital T truth. They don't even believe T scare quotes truth, where truth corresponds to what is real. And that is to say that the grass is green is true if and only if the grass is in fact green, and it makes that statement true. So the correspondence theory of truth, that truth is to be discovered out there. I don't just make it up in here. We don't collectively make it up as a group either. That idea was part of the pre-modernist and the modernist identity for thousands of years. Postmodernism then comes along and says, hey, modernists, we like you doing away with the pre-modernists, but guess what? You're out of here too. Mm-hmm. Truth is what my peers will let me get away with, Richard Rorty said. Or Foucault, truth is reducible to power. There is no such thing as objective truth. Mm. Truth is about language games. It's about what we decide. And so sociologists like to say that knowledge is a social construction of reality. That is, all knowledge, including self-identity knowledge. I think I'm a woman, therefore I am a woman. I think I'm a giraffe only on Tuesday nights, therefore I am a giraffe only on Tuesday nights. This is where this is leading. And now, because of that, and anyone who opposes your truth, this is my truth, that's your truth. You do you, I do me. These guys have been radicalized by this Marxist ethos, by this religion of revolution, that if you disagree with them, it's not enough to debate over. Debate is hate. Hate or celebrate. That's the mantra. And so if you say something like transgenderism seems false, then they'll take away your Humanist of the Year award, even from Richard Dawkins after 25 years.
Yeah.
If you say it and you're, say, Charlie Kirk, they will kill you, and they did. And then what they do is they come home and they say, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, would you rather have a living son or a dead daughter? You choose. And then all of a sudden, the parents and the grandparents, just to hold on to that relationship by a shoestring, end up going progressive. And that's what we're finding happening in our churches.
Okay. So in New York City, in a recent election, a socialist who I think is actually a communist, Zoran Mamdani, was elected mayor. And his platform that drew a lot of young people, because I've talked to a lot of people who thought he was pretty cool, he's going to make it more affordable to live here, and he's going to raise our wages. It was this progressive socialist kind of thing. What you're saying is that's not what's really happening. There's something deeper here that's taking place. This deconstruction of meaning itself. So tie that in, because I think more and more people, I think it just happened in Seattle as well, they're facing people on the ballot who say, I'm socialist, and what that means is I like for people to share things, and the rent should not be so high. But they're getting drawn into something that is rooted in these ideas being taught in universities that you're discussing.
Yeah, and it's not just universities. Remember, as it flowed from the universities, it went into politics, into media, and into ecclesia. This is in our churches, our seminaries, our campus ministries, even our Christian academic societies, to the point where my daughter is studying elementary ed right now at Purdue University. I look through all of her syllabi, and it's throughout. So she's got a father like me that's got 4 graduate degrees and sniffed this stuff out. I was published in Marxist Thought 20 plus years ago before anyone knew what woke was. It was like 9/11. We didn't know what a Muslim was. And the next day we started asking questions. The following day we went to church, and then the next day we forgot about it. We started asking what woke is, what Marxism is, what socialism is. I saw this there. I mean, I've been contacted by Texas congressmen asking me for character assessments from classmates of mine when I was there at Purdue, a conservative school by secular university standards, because one of my classmates has now written 4 books on anarchy. He's an Antifa professor, doxed the police chief's wife and so forth in Texas. And so the attorney general's examining him. This stuff, if my daughter didn't have someone like me who's focused on this, and let's say she wanted to go teach not in the public schools, but she wanted to go in the K through 6 schools in the Christian environment, she's taking this Marxism stuff with her. And where this comes from, Jeff, is that in seminary 30 years ago, I learned about liberation theology, and I saw it in Central and South America. I never thought it would do much of anything. Yeah, it impacted Black liberation theology in America, but it's not really going to take root. When I got to Purdue and I'm studying under a distinguished professor of Marxism, I get published in it. All of a sudden, I realized this is coming. This is coming quick. And what was going on is, down in Central and South America, there was one Marxist Brazilian scholar, Paulo Freire. Freire wrote the foreword to James Cone, who's the father of modern Black liberation theology, to his liberation theology magnum opus. And Fierra's great book is Critical Pedagogy. Remember critical theory?
I do remember. Yeah. So there's almost no chance that a student studying education today is not going to be reading that book, or at least essays from him. Like, this is completely ingrained in the institutions.
He trained James Cone, whose two primary disciples were Raphael Warnock, now senator in Georgia, who did his eulogy, PhD, Dr. Reverend Raphael Warnock, and Jeremiah Wright, who was Obama's pastor. And Obama, in his own memoirs, said, and I saw this before while he was still a state senator, I chose my professors carefully, the post-colonialists, the Marxists. And so, yes, now the fourth most cited author in all the social sciences and humanities is Paulo Freire. All of our colleges of education are Freirean schools. I'm watching it in my daughter's syllabi. And so even if parents are thinking, well, we should just send them all to Christian schools, good luck. You have got to know what this false philosophy is, because it has infiltrated not just the academia, it's in the ecclesia. That's their goal. And we're fighting this fight within, and I can name names. And I'm happy to, because we need to save what we have left. But this is my contention. Parents and grandparents are literally paying for the apostasy of their own children when they send them off to the secular baptismal font unprepared. But how are parents being prepared? They're both working now for one reason or another. They're exhausted when they get home at night. They figured they could throw off Johnny to the youth pastor. Well, the statistics now of those holding a biblical worldview among the pastorate is absolutely paltry, far worse for the youth pastor. So the parents aren't always preparing. The pastors aren't prepared. In fact, a lot of the pastors, being so ingrained in this new fad of skinny jeans and fog machines, or sucking in from culture and sociology rather than scripture and theology, are getting conscripted to work for the other side. So as parents, the Bible says that it's our responsibility to train the child in the way they should go, and when they get older, they won't depart from it. But right now, we train the child in the way they should go, and when they get older, they get conscripted to work for the other side. We need to understand this is not Richard Dawkins and scientific naturalism anymore. He's now wanting to be our friend. This is something more dangerous, more juicy. It's talking about ethics, and it gets at the heartstrings of so many people. We need to understand what this is. And I would go so far as to say this, that even if we've switched gears in the field of apologetics and we're focusing on cultural apologetics, if you do not understand postmodern cultural Marxism, you are ill-equipped to deal with cultural apologetics today. It has switched feet, and the old guard, they're out.
Yeah. I want to talk about the university some, but we probably should talk about church first. There's this expression, colloquially, of when is it time to break the glass and pull the fire alarm? So what's the break the glass kind of thing that a pastor or youth pastor is going to say that should make you think, I think they've been indoctrinated? What kinds of things are they actually going to say, or how are they going to say it?
The neo-Marxist twist was to fuse Freud and Marx together. Freudian sexuality and Marxist theory about conflict theory and everybody being oppressors or oppressed. They added to that race, class, sex, gender, ethnicity, and so forth. And so you're going to see all of these from the hub. You're going out into race, to class, to sex, to gender, to iceberg theory, to everything. Once you see it and you understand the essence of this stuff, you can't unsee it. And you're going to be seeing it at the end of all the spokes at their points of application in culture. So it might be with gender pronoun theory. It might be with race and inequality, where inequality entails injustice.
So let me stop right there for a second. So let's just start with the pronouns. So if you're in a church and they say we need to be kind and hospitable by using whatever pronouns people say represent them. That would be an indication to you that there's a worldview shift that has taken place.
Absolutely, because gender is binary. In fact, we didn't talk about sexual gender or sexual orientation until like John Money in the 50s and 60s. And Alfred Kinsey, who's now got a statue out there at Indiana University, making him a hero. Once we start going down that path and we start wanting to be kind, Biola University is in the heat right now. A lot of discussion around a recent gender statement that they had up, and they pulled it after Alyssa Childers and Megan Basham and other people brought it to light. Who authorized that? Why did they keep it? Who initialized that, and so forth? But it's not just Biola. You're seeing it at Calvin. You're seeing it at Wheaton. You're seeing this in campus ministries. It's almost like the barbarians are no longer at the gates. They're in the citadel in every flora and fauna. If someone says, "Tell me a college that my kids could go to where this is not happening," I'm like, "You want me to name all three?" Everybody's got like this.
My list is getting a lot shorter for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still trying to dig into, people are going to say certain things that sound good on the surface. And that's what, when people talk about pronoun hospitality, well, who doesn't want to be hospitable? That sounds nice. That sounds like something that we should do. But what are the things that, say in race or economic status, things like that, where you're starting to see that pastors and churches even are just parroting stuff, like you're using the idea of an iceberg. 9/10 of an iceberg is below the surface of the water.
Yeah.
What you see is just 1/9 of it. What are they saying? How do you know that they're being affected by this cultural Marxism?
Part of what critical theory and postmodernism have done is to set out a new lexicon, new discourses, to change the language. It's all about language games and infuse new meaning. So a lot of the words are going to be the same. Like they've got justice, and now it's social justice. And now that it's caught on and churches no longer want to just have mercy ministries, they now have just justice ministries. And if you've got a justice ministry at your church, there's a good chance that what they mean by that isn't justice, getting what you deserved. It's social justice, a redistribution of power and privilege along the axis of race, class, sex, gender. Some of the words are the same. Love. Now we say love is love. And I want to say, water is water, whether from a tap or a toilet, right? No, love has meaning. It means willing, not emoting, willing the good of the other. They've captured our Christian diction, and this is why it's been so easy to infiltrate the churches, because inconsistent with the first 1900 years of Christianity, we have abdicated our role and responsibility in high culture because we kicked out the life of the mind. Mark Knoll wrote the book, The Scandal of the Evangelical Mind, right after Alan Bloom wrote the something of the American Mind, The Closing of the American Mind. But 30 years ago, almost this month, Knoll wrote The Scandal of the Evangelical Mind, which is to say there isn't much of an evangelical mind. And that has not changed. So we have, embraced Christ with our hearts and with our hands, but we have excommunicated the head of Christ, and that has allowed this stuff to come in. And so evangelicals, we believe in original sin. We believe that God hates sin. We believe that God hates oppression. And then all of a sudden we jump to oppression is sin, and sin is oppression, and God is love, and love is love, and Jesus is love, and what would Jesus do? And suddenly everybody is part of the new left. Not the liberals versus conservatives, the new left, the socialist left. 66% of self-identifying Democrats today, as of Gallup poll, embrace socialism. This is huge something has taken over that whole party, but something is taking over the Christian churches as well. It's this new ideology. So it's really hard just to say, what words are the buzzwords? Let me throw out some common ones that people maybe hear about working in business even. DEI. That's how it got over from the social sciences and the humanities to jump ship into the domain of the scientific naturalists, which was medicine, math, engineering, physics, chemistry, and so forth. It came in through the DEI administrative programs. I choose to call it DIE. And let me tell your audience what these terms mean. Diversity sounds great. Shouldn't we celebrate, all of God's creation? And inclusivity, yeah, why would I want to exclude people? I'm a Christian. I love everyone. God so loved the world. And, equality? Who's not for equality? The French had their version in the French Revolution. The Americans had those. But now we've changed it to equity. It was equality, and then we quickly, secretly, just like social justice to justice, we've now changed it, and now it's equity. So let me unpack these so people know what the academics mean by this and what they're flushing through the system. And I do this because I'm a trained philosopher, and I think about the three branches of philosophy. What is real? How do I know what is real? How should I then live based on what I know about reality? Mm-hmm. That's philosophy, right? Here is reality. The metaphysical view of human relations is that we are social binaries. We are in these oppositions of haves and have-nots, victims, victimizers, oppressed and oppressed, male, female, black, white, rich, poor, hetero, homo, trans, cis, Christian, and everybody else, and so forth. One is the oppressor class, the other is the oppressed class. Move up from there, you've just identified all of the diverse groups, and the problem in society is group oppression, right? Socioeconomic oppression from Marx's standpoint, but it's now blended and gone farther. You then move up to knowledge, you become woke, your eyes get opened if you are part of the oppressed group. And so you include all the BIPOC people of color, all the LGBTQ minoritized groups, women against men, the poor, and so forth, because only they can see. The white Christian male, he just needs to listen, learn, and lament because he's totally blind to it. So we exclude the oppressor groups, we include the oppressed groups and exalt them because they have the secret moral knowledge, and we give them authority to do what? Social justice. If the problem is social oppression, the solution is social liberation by redistributing wealth, power, race, class, sex, gender, ethnicity, and so forth. So it's a coerced redistribution of power. And remember, truth is not what we discover. Truth is identical to power.
There's going to be a lot to unpack in this, and the book is called The Progressive Miseducation of America. Corey, I'm over the amount of time that I usually do with the show here, but I really feel like we need to land this plane a little bit. People who are watching or listening to this show right now are listening or watching because they're really concerned. They're concerned about what is going on. They're concerned about what's happening with their kids. And based on what we've been talking about today, they probably should be concerned about what is happening in their church. What are some of the action steps?
Sure. Action steps is the final third of my book. I try to encourage people. I want to follow Gramsci and the cultural Marxist on the long march through the institutions. There's a clue how they took our universities in two revolutions. We need to do the same. We can't just keep starting institution over and over with an endowment of $1,000 an Atari computer when Harvard's got $52 billion. We need to reinfiltrate our universities, and we can do that. It's a 40 or 50 year game plan. I write about it in my book, but we need to be able to showcase repenting as the church and as parents and as pastors, and start doing what Jesus commanded when they said, what's the greatest commandment? To love God with your heart, soul, and mind. We need to repent and start loving God with our mind. Be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you for the reason, for hope that's in you, with gentleness and respect, the head, the heart, and the hands. That's the fully integrated Christian, not the disintegrated Humpty Dumpty that is without a head today. We need to be able to show people that Christianity is good for the world. This is cultural apologetics now, because they're saying it's evil, it's oppressive, it's wicked, it's hateful, that it's reasonable, and that it's true. So this is Christian apologetics. It's what you guys do there. It's what we do on the campuses. And then I give a clarion call to pastors, to parents, to parachurches, to philanthropists and donors, to political allies, and to professors and educators of all sorts, and then finally to prayers, all hands on deck. It's the university, stupid. You may not be called to go into the university today like we are, but everybody needs to prepare for the poisonous ideology coming out of the universities, because it's coming into our churches, it's coming into our families. You can't even hide in your closets anymore. We have iPhones in there. And so everybody needs to figure out what this ideology is and how to combat it from a Christian thought and biblical way with good, solid love and truth in the manner that we do this. And think about this. Most of the revolutions or the revivals that have taken place in our culture over hundreds of years, from the First and Second Great Awakening to, Asbury and Azusa and Yale, to Wittenberg and Professor Martin Luther's Reformation, was the college campus. We have got to prepare for the ideology coming from it, because you can't hide, and we have got to have a game plan to go back in.
You know what? One of the things we're doing at Summit Ministries now is with Dr. Roger Erdvig and Dr. Maggie Pope, training young teachers. They're coming into Christian schools from these universities, and they're completely woke. And these schools have a 20% turnover every year with their teachers. Within 3 years, you won't have a Christian school anymore unless you are intentionally training teachers to teach from a biblical worldview in every subject, rather than to accept the cultural Marxist assumptions that they were trained to operate from in their university. Man, well, wide-ranging discussion here. It's going to be really interesting to see how all of this comes together. And Corey, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the Ratio Christi groups on different campuses. If you've got a young adult on a college campus and they're looking for this, that's a group, and we'll give you the information in the outro here. That's a group that you can get them connected with, where they'll at least be among people who embrace a biblical worldview and are trying to figure out how that applies to their studies. So anyway, thanks, Corey.
Yes.
Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you to my guest, Dr. Corey Miller, for coming on the show today. You can go to Ratio Christi, R-A-T-I-O, ratiochristi.org to find more of the resources that are available, and possibly even start a chapter on a campus near you. This podcast is a resource of Summit Ministries. If you are a parent who desires your child to grow up following Jesus and embracing God's truth, I want you to check out all the resources we have available at summit.org/parents. They include podcasts, articles, live streams, and more, and the epic 2-week summer program that changes young adults' lives. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.